Hello my lovelies, welcome back to my channel. This is your girl Angel from Simply Angel Tiah. In this video I am going to do a tutorial to show you guys how to do these leg warmers. It's still winter, so we can still use something that is gonna make us as warm as possible. And as you can see here, this is pretty much what we're gonna be working on. As you can see as well, you can see that this is a little bit twisted and this one is straight. I did that on purpose to show you guys because these can also just kind of twist like this. It's not something that you can control. For some reason, they just twist. Hey, it looks nice. I don't care. It looks nice. You can make it stay straight, but if it kind of just goes and twists itself like that, I think it looks super awesome. So that is why I kind of showed you guys these two like that. But if you want to straighten it, this is why I joined the two sides together. If you grab those guys and just kind of shake it and then kind of straighten it, then it's going to go straight and you will see that your stitches are matching up like that, just kind of like the way we have the other one. So this is pretty much it here. So this is what I'm going to show you guys how to do. This is something that I have. This pattern is something that I did for my wrist warmers, and it's very popular design that everybody's asking me to do other things using this stitch. So this is something that one of you asked that I do a tutorial for the leg warmers. So this is it here. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the leg warmers, and maybe eventually I'll do like a headband and a beanie or a hat using this stitch, because those are also things that have been asked of me to do using this stitch. So but for now I'm going to be showing you guys how to do this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, my lovelies, so before we get this project started, I'm going to show you all the materials that I'm using for it. As you can see here, I have my yarn. I'll just talk to you guys quickly about it here. So this yarn is from Impeccable by Loops and Threads. The measuring units are all right here for you, so you know how much yarn to get. It's a medium weight number 4. Recommended hook size is 5mm crochet hook or H8 US. And what else here? It's 100% acrylic, and it's called Burgundy. The color is called Burgundy. Okay, so it's a little bit shiny, just reflecting the light because it's a very shiny material here. But that's pretty much the yarn here. So what I recommend if you're going to be making this is just make sure you check the description box below for the details of the yarn, the crochet hook size that I'm using. And the reason for that is I often get messages asking me how much yarn I use, what kind of yarn I used. So I just decided to make sure on every video I put the details of the yarn and the crochet hook size that I use. So make sure you check that out. Okay, so speaking of that, a crochet hook I'm going to be using for this project is actually 5.5mm crochet hook or I9 US. And that's just a preference because I want to make my work a little bit loose. So I decided to just kind of get a little bit of a bigger crochet hook size than what is recommended, because I'm going to need my scissors to cut my strands. I'm going to keep a stitch marker around just in case I need it. And then, of course, you're going to need your darning needle for at the end to join your work together. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, my lovelies, so let's go ahead and get started here. So I have my yarn wrapped here just like I usually do, and I've also left a long chain here, or a long, I guess, strings that we're going to be able to use to join the work together. So I usually either leave it at the beginning here, or at the end when I cut off the yarn I leave a long tail. But I'm doing it like this because if you end up running out of yarn, it's always safe to have it already kind of saved. That is the reason why I do it, to be honest, but you can obviously do it however you want to do it. Okay, anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start by doing a foundation chain of 61, and I'm going to do a slip knot first to be able to do our foundation chain, just like that. Okay, now with this project you can make it in different sizes. So I'm making it for me, which I usually consider a small. That's why I'm doing a chain of 61. So if you want to make it longer, and that is actually the size of it is going to be from my ankle and just right covering my knee, my kneecap. Okay, so for this leg warmer, you can make it in whatever size you want. You can make it shorter, you can make it longer, you could take it all the way up to your thigh. That is all up to you. This is what's going to determine how long your leg warmer is. And it's going to be the longer the chain, the longer your leg warmer is. The shorter the chain that you start with, the shorter the leg warmer is going to be. So that is all up to you. When it comes to measurement, just measure from where on your leg do you want covered, and then make the size by deciding how many chains cover that amount of space. Okay, and when you do your chains, let's say you want to cover 15 inches worth of your leg. Okay, if that is what you're doing, it's always recommended that you do chains that are longer than the 15 inches. So what I usually do is, if I'm going to do something that is about 15 inches, then I make a chain that is about 20 inches. And it's just my own kind of the way I learn how to crochet, because if I follow the exact length that I want to make, as you crochet, your work is going to shrink a little bit. So you want to kind of make it a little bit longer so that it kind of brings the shrinkage of it is going to actually bring it closer to the size that you're looking for. Anyways, so let's go ahead and get started with that now. So I'm going to start with my chain of 61. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, my lovelies, so this is my chain of 61 here. Okay, so as you can see, this would be the length of it here. But when I work into this, it's gonna kind of bring it a little bit shorter. But this is pretty much how long the chain of 61 is. Okay, now the 61st stitch here, so the 61 stitch that we just did, is going to be our turning chain. All right, so I'm going to skip this 61 chain, and in the 60th I'm going to go in the back of that, and I'm going to do a single crochet stitch just like that. And then I'm going to move on to the next stitch right here, and I'm going to do my single crochet stitch. Then I'm going to move on to the next, which is the one right here, and I'm going to do my single crochet. And I'm just going to do this all the way down the chain until I get to the beginning. And of course, when you get there as well, so do the same when you get there, come back to the video, and I'm going to show you how to start the second row. Okay, but this row here is just gonna be single crochets in the back of the chain. Okay, so go ahead and do so, and I will see you guys when you get to the end. Okay, so I have gone ahead and completed my 60 stitches of this single crochet stitch in the back. So that is pretty much how my first row looks like. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the second row of the project. And for the second row, we're going to start with a chain 1. And by the way, your chain 1 is going to be the start of every single row either way. Okay, and then you will turn your project. Okay, and now that you have your project turned, we're going to start by doing single crochet stitches in the back of the stitch. So back loop single crochet for 16 stitches. So we're just gonna go right into the stitch right after the chain 1 right here and do our single crochet, and then move on to the next stitch right beside it and do our single crochet stitch, and then go on and do this for the next 16 stitches, and then come back and I'll show you how to do something different from there. Okay, so that is my 16 stitches of the single crochet stitch in the back of the loop. Okay, now this is where you can choose to use your stitch marker just to mark where you have the 16th stitch of the single crochet. I'm not gonna use it because I just kind of wing it like this, and I make sure I count my stitches every now and then. But if you don't want to forget where your 16th stitch is for whatever reason, make sure you have your stitch marker and you can just mark the spot and then continue to work in the next for the rest of the row. Okay, so for the rest of the row, we're going to do our puff stitches. Okay, so this is where we're going to incorporate the puff stitches into the project, and this portion of it here is going to be the part that is on the ankle of your foot, like right around your ankle. and then this is going to be the part that goes up your leg. Okay, so this is going to be the top and this is going to be the bottom. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do our puff stitches here. So to do a puff stitch, for those of you who are not familiar or you have not seen my wrist warmers and other projects that I've done with this stitch, you're just gonna go right into the next stitch, but you're going through both loops, and you're gonna yarn over and bring the yarn through. You're gonna have 2 loops on the hook, and then you're gonna yarn over and go into the same stitch and then bring your yarn back. You should have 4 loops on the hook. You're gonna yarn over again, go into the same stitch, bring your yarn back, and at this point you should have 6 loops on your hook like that. And when you have your 6 loops on the hook, you're going to yarn over and go through all 6 like that. Okay, and then you're going to lock these up by doing a chain 1. So this is your puff stitch right here, right there. Okay, and then you're going to skip the next stitch. In the next one from there, you're going to repeat the puff stitch. So just go right into this stitch, both loops, yarn over. You have 2 stitches on the you have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring the yarn back. You have 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring the yarn back. You have 6 loops on the hook like that, yarn over, go through all 6, then chain 1 to lock it in. Okay, so that's your second puff stitch, and this is pretty much what you're going to repeat all the way to the end. So go ahead and do that, and when you have done your final puff stitch, stop there, come back to the video, and I will show you how to finish off the end and then to turn our work and to do the next row. Okay, so go ahead and complete your puff stitches, and this is going to be for the 44 stitches that we have left, because we did 16 stitches with a single crochet stitch. We had 44 stitches to go, so you're going to be doing puff stitches in that 44 stitches that are left. But keep in mind, you're skipping a stitch every time. So when you go and do your next puff stitch, you're skipping a stitch right before that. And that is important because you want to make sure you have this gap. Otherwise, your puff stitches are going to be all clustered together and it's going to look kind of messy. You want them to have that separation like this. Okay, so go ahead and complete your puff stitches, and when you're at the end, come back and I'll show you how to start the third row. Okay, my lovelies, so I have gone ahead and completed my second row here, which is 16 stitches of the single crochet stitch in the back loop, and then I did puff stitches. And because we're skipping every other stitch, we end up with 22 stitches from the 44 rows that we had left to work with. Okay, so again, because we're skipping a stitch between our puff stitches, we have 22 rows or 22 puff stitches and 22 gaps that we are skipping, that we skipped in between. That makes your 44 stitches. Now, as you can see here, I have this little bump left here. I did my puff stitch, my last puff stitch right there, my 22nd stitch, puff stitch right there. And for this final stitch, it is going to be a simple single crochet stitch to lock that in like that. Okay, so this is my second row here. That's how it looks like. And so I'm going to show you how to start the third row. I'm going to chain 1, turn my work like this. So I'm working away back this way. Okay, and for this row, after we chain 1 and turn, the very first stitch right here, we're going to do a single crochet stitch, and you're going through both loops as well. Okay, and then you're going to start your next puff stitch. So again, because we're skipping stitches between our puff stitches, this is a stitch right here that we're skipping, and then in this next one we're going to do a puff stitch. We're going to skip this stitch. In this one we do a puff stitch, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we're repeating what we did in this previous row with this row here, except we're working backwards. And then when we get to where there's 16 stitches left, we're going to then complete it by doing the 16 stitches in just a single crochet stitch in the back loop. Okay, all right, so we're gonna go ahead and do a puff stitch right in this stitch right here. Just go right into that gap right there and do your puff stitch. Okay, and you know how to do that already based on this previous row. Make sure you have 6 loops on the hook like that. Yarn over, go through all 6, and then lock it with a chain 1. Skip this stitch. In the next one, do your puff stitch. Okay, and again, you're just going to repeat this until you get to the end. Your final puff stitch is going to go right here. As you can see, this is the puff stitch from the previous row. Right on the other side, right here, is going to be your final puff stitch for this row. And then there should be 16 stitches all here to do your single crochets in the back loop. But to complete your puff stitches all the way until you get to this final one, and then come back and I will show you how to do the rest of the row here in the single crochet stitch in the back loop. And then we'll go ahead and get started with our row 4. And then yeah, and then we just go on from there. So continue to do your puff stitches in this row until you get to the final 6 stitches to go. Okay, my lovelies, so I have completed my puff stitches in the 3rd row here. So as you can see, this is my last puff stitch that I just completed. And again, make sure you count to make sure you have 22 puff stitches and 22 gaps that you skipped in between. Okay, and now for the remaining 16 stitches, I'm just going to go, so this is the next stitch right here. As you can see, right here is my next stitch, and I'm just gonna go right in the back of that stitch and do my single crochet, and then go in the next stitch and do my single crochet in the back loop. And then you just continue to do this for the next 16 stitches. So if you had your stitch marker, this is where you would have marked it, and then you would take it off, do your single crochet, replace it, and then continue to work down the rest of the row here. And there's nothing too complicated with this. This is pretty much what you're going to do to the end. What I do a little bit differently than other crafters may be doing or other crocheters do is, instead of going through the back loop of the final stitch, I go through both loops for that final one. Just a preference. I prefer it. It makes it neater for me, I feel like. So that is your own preference of however you want to do that. But I will show you just now how I finish my final stitch. So this is my final stitch here. Instead of going through the back loop like this, I am going to go through both loops like that, and do my final single crochet. Okay, so this is how this portion of the work should look like. For those of you who did the wrist warmers, you kind of know the shape of how this looks already. So as you can see, it gets a little bit wider here compared to here, and that's because for most people the bottom of your leg is a little bit smaller, and then as it goes up your leg it gets bigger. And this is pretty much what I'm trying to imitate with this design here. Okay, so after you finish your final stitch there, you're going to do a chain 1 and turn. Okay, and we're going to do single crochet stitches in the back loop for the first 16 stitches. So this is going to be something that you do in pretty much every single repeat. But in this case here, because we're working with a different stitch all throughout, which is just a single crochet stitch all across, then you're not going to worry about counting the first 16 stitches. It's going to be in the in a couple of stitches or a couple of rows that we have to worry about doing the 16 stitches first in the single crochet stitch and then moving on to the puff stitches. But for the next 4 rows, we're going to be doing just single crochets in the back loop of each of the stitches. So the reason I say do this in the first 16 stitches is because it's very obvious where this is. So as you can see, this is my 16th stitch right here, going through the back loop. But now I'm going to show you how to go through the back loop of your puff stitches as well. So as you can see, these are the stitches right here. You're just going to pick up the next stitch and go in the back loop and do your single crochet stitch, and then go to the next, go do your single crochet stitch in the next stitch, and then in the back loop of the next stitch. And that's pretty much what you do all the way to the end. So you just continue to do your single crochets in the back of each of the stitches. Okay, so this is how it should look like. Okay, and when you get to the end, what I do again, like I said, is in the last one here, I'm going to go through both loops, and then, oops, that is extremely loud, and I apologize for that. If that startled you, because it did me, I apologize. So yeah, I'm going to work with these single crochet stitches all the way to the end here. When you get to the final stitch, go through the both loops of that stitch, and then I'm going to show you how to pretty much turn and then repeat that 3 more times before we go back to doing 2 more rows of the puff stitches. So this is this is just literally duplicating what I did with the wrist warmers, except I'm doing it longer because it's the leg warmer. Okay, so just continue to do this all the way to the end. When you get to the end, come back to the video and I will show you how to start the next row. Okay, my lovelies, so I'm just about to finish my last stitch here. So I just came back to show you guys that for this last stitch, I just go through both loops like that and I complete my single crochet stitch. Okay, so that is the first row of the complete single crochet stitch across. We're going to start our second, so chain 1 and turn. Okay, and then for this row, we're going to pretty much repeat the same thing. So just do your single crochet right after you chain 1 and turn. This is the first stitch. You do your single crochet in the back loop, and you go into the next stitch and do the same thing, and so on and so forth. When you get to the end here, I go through the last loop by going through both loops like this, the final stitch by going through the both loops, and then chain 1, repeat, and we're going to do 4 rows of this single crochet stitch in the back loop. So this is our first we just completed. I just started our second, and then do 2 more after that. And when you have completed those, come back to the video when you have your 4 rows of the single crochet stitch in the back loop, and then I will show you how to go back to doing the puff stitches, and then that's going to be repeat. Okay, so I will see you guys when you've completed 4 rows of the single crochet stitch in the back loop. Okay, my lovelies, so I have completed my 4 rows of the single crochet stitch in the back loop, and that's how my work looks like right now. Okay, so as you can see, we started off with a row of single crochet stitch in the back of the chain, and then we did 2 rows of the puff stitch, with the exception of doing the single crochet in the back loop here, and then now have completed 4 rows of the single crochet stitch in the back loop exclusively. And then we're going to now repeat this row of the 2 puff stitches here. And as you can see, I'm at the end of my the 4 stitches here, or the 4 rows I'm at the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a chain 1 and turn my work. Okay, and I'm going to show you just up to where we go and transition into the puff stitches, and then you're gonna be repeating until you get the size that you're looking for. So in the very first stitch here, I'm going to do a single crochet in the back loop. That's 1, and then I'm going to do that until I have my 16 single crochet stitches in the back loop. So that's 3. Okay, my love, so I have done 16 stitches of the single crochet in the back loop right there. Okay, so that's how it looks like. And then I'm going to transition into doing the puff stitches, which is pretty much repeating what we did for our row 2 to now this row here. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So row 2 to 7 we're repeating, oh no, sorry, row 2 to row 6 we're repeating the exact same thing. So to repeat that row, then we're going to go ahead and do a puff stitches. So in the very next stitch, we're going to go in and yarn over, have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through the same stitch, bring the yarn back, you have 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring the yarn back, you have 6 stitches, yarn over, go through all 6, chain 1 to lock it in. Okay, skip this stitch. In the next stitch, repeat your puff stitch right there. Okay, and then skip that stitch. In the next stitch, repeat your puff stitch. And so this is where I'm going to leave you guys to pretty much build up your work, because what we're doing here is we're repeating what we did exactly here. So I'm going to do these puff stitches all the way to the end. I'm gonna have one stitch left. I'm gonna do a single crochet stitch going through both loops in that final stitch, chain one, turn around, do a single crochet stitch in the very first stitch after I turn my work, and then start my puff stitches after skipping one stitch, and then do that all the way until I have 16 stitches to go. And then I'm going to do my single crochet stitches in the back loop for the final 16 stitches. And then when I have that 2 puff stitch rows completed, then I'm going to go into doing 4 rows of the single crochet stitches in the back loop, and then I'm going to repeat that pretty much until I get the size that I want. So I have very skinny legs, so I'm going to need only 36 rows to get what I'm looking for. So what you're going to do you're going to end your rows with the single crochet stitches, but instead of doing 4 single crochet stitches in the back loop like we do in between the puff stitches, you're going to do only 3. And the reason you're doing 3 is because we have the first stitch that we did here was the single crochet stitch, and so when you add the 3 that you do at the end to this, when you fold it in, then it gets your 4 single crochet stitches. I hope you understand that. But when I come back after I complete my 36 rows, you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll let you guys work offline from here. Do as many rows as you require to cover your leg, and usually you go by the biggest part of your leg. So in this case, just right over my knee is the biggest part, because I'm not going over my thigh, because then it will get bigger. So right over, like above my knee, is going to be the biggest part of my leg. So then I'm going to do the rows that I'm going to know that when I fold it in and sew it, it's going to cover that part of my leg. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And when you have your number of rows required for your size, come back and I will meet you guys back when I have my 36 rows. Okay, see you guys in a bit. Okay, my lovelies, so I have my 36 rows for this project, and as you can see, I zoomed my camera so you can see the full project on the view like that. So this is pretty much the 36 rows that I was talking about. This is where we started our project, as you can tell by the tail that we left hanging here, and then I worked up like this. So right up here I have only 3 rows of the single crochet stitches in the back loop, like I said, to do so that when we kind of put our work together, the first row of the single crochet stitch that we did at the beginning is going to be our 4th. So we connect it, is going to kind of have the same effect as here. So this is pretty much how this work is going to connect. We're going to connect it pretty much right here all the way up, and this is going to be around my ankle, where my ankle will go, or the lower part of my leg. And then this is going to be the top of where my knee goes. So again, keep in mind this work stretches quite a bit. So, and also I worked a little bit loose with my work, so that's another key, is to make sure you're working a little bit on the loose side, which is why I decided to go up 0.5 millimeter crochet hook on my hook. Instead of 5 millimeter, I use a 5.5. It helps me to do a little bit of a looser work, making it a little bit stretchier like this. If you crochet tight especially, you have to make sure you're always using a crochet hook that is a little bit larger if you want to do something that is more on the loose side. Okay, so this is how we're going to be joining this. But there's one more thing that I want to do here. As you can see, our work is not completely even on top here. So instead of, I don't want to leave it like that. You probably could, like, it's not a bad thing, like it looks okay. And I kind of sometimes like these raggedy edges like this. I don't mind it, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to do a row of single crochet up here just to create a little bit of a neat finish, I guess. So what I will do is I will just kind of turn my work like this. Then I'm going to bring in my work, and then we're just going to do that row of single crochet at the end, and then we should be able to finish and be able to join our work. So I'm just going to chain 1 here turn my work like this so I can work horizontally, like on top. And then right in this stitch, right where I have my final my last chain, my last stitch, I'm going to do a single crochet stitch. And then in the next space here, I'm going to do a single crochet stitch. And then in here, in the space that is like a valley, I'm going to pick up a stitch right there and do a single crochet stitch. Now keep in mind, don't go in this space here. Don't go in like this, because then you're gonna keep this gap really big here. So what I do is I just go, there's a stitch that you can pick up in between those two, and you just do your single crochet stitch, and then you go on to the next space. You just pretty much kind of do this all the way to the end here, and that should be the end, and then we will be able to join our two sides together. So go ahead and complete your row of single crochet stitches here. The other thing you could do as well, let's say you have completed your project like this, and maybe you want it a little bit longer than how it came out. Instead of, like, you know, trying to frog the whole thing and starting over, what you can do is you can actually increase your work from here. And because we know your leg gets wider as it goes up, instead of doing this single crochet stitch, you could do like a half double crochet stitch or a double crochet stitch moving up that way. Therefore it creates like a little bit of a wider angle here, and you can kind of actually increase your work up this way to make it a little bit longer. But for this, the sake of this tutorial here, and because I don't want to do that, and also because it's the right size that I'm looking to have, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do this one single row of single crochet to create a little bit of a neat edge here, and that would be it. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and when you get to the end, come back and we will go on to the next part of the project. Okay, my lovelies, so I have completed doing my single crochet stitches on top of the project here. So as you can see, that's my final stitch. And what we're gonna do here is we're just going to cut this yarn somewhere here, and then we're going to lock this guy in so we don't unravel our work, just like that. And as you can see, this is how the first part of this leg warmer looks like. Okay, so that's how it looks like, and what you literally have to do is duplicate this and get the exact same one for the other leg. And when you have both of them, then you're gonna come back to the video and we're going to then join our work so that we can have the actual leg warmer fully completed this way. Okay, so what you will do here is just go ahead and get started with the next part, the next panel, or the next leg. And if you're not remembering the steps for doing the first one, just go ahead and rewind the video to the beginning and then start doing the second one. When you have that one done, come back to the video and I will show you guys how to join the leg warmer together and be done. Okay, so I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, my lovelies, so I have completed my second leg warmer as well. So as you can see here, I have my two pieces done. Okay, so this is the one that I worked with with you guys, and then this one is the one that I did offline. And as you can see, there are two duplicate pretty much pieces for it, and then we're gonna just be joining each one of them like this to get the parts done, and then that will be it. So what I will do is I will just put one on the side and I will show you guys how to join this one, and then you can join the other one on your own as well. So the main thing here is, so as you can see where I finished off my 3 single crochet in the back loop of the stitches, I have it so that it's like on this side is a little bit protruded, on this side is like it goes in. So I will use that side to kind of join it like this. You can also do it the other way, but I prefer to do it like this. Okay, so and then you're just going to line up your work very nicely. What you can do so you don't miss stitches is you can take your stitch marker and you can count 16 stitches and put your stitch marker there, but it's kind of very obvious where it goes, because the very next stitch is where your where your puff stitch goes. But just so you can join your work very evenly as you go all the way up to the top here. But I won't worry about that because I know where I'm going to be going. And then you take your darning needle, take the yarn that we had left from where we started our project, which is why I love doing this, because then now I can join my work going up this way. And we're just going to put that in the darning needle. And I'm going to show you how to do some of it, and then you can finish the rest of it on your own. And we're just going to pretty much, so what I do usually is I have the part that have the tail hanging on the side that is away from me. The side that doesn't have is closest to me, and therefore I'm just going to pick the very first stitch here, connect it to the stitch on the other side, and then pull, oops, and then pull, and that kind of snatches that very first spot. And I repeat that by going to the same stitch more than once, like just twice like that. And then I am going to go into the next stitch, and I'm going to go through both loops like this, and then scoop the other side by going through both loops as well. And then I'm going to pull, and make sure your yarn is actually going over the stitches and not kind of hanging around somewhere else like that. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch right here and pick up the other side as well. And I'm going to pull, and then I'm going to go into the next stitch, picking both loops, both stitches, and then pulling. And then I'm just going to repeat this all the way until I get to the end. So there's nothing very complicated with this. For those of you who always say, can you show us how to join panels? I join panels just the same way that I'm doing here. So if you're watching this and maybe in the past videos you have asked me how to join panels, this is pretty much the process here, and I've shown how to do that in other projects as well in the past. So you just go through both loops. For this technique, there's another technique where you pick up one loop only on one side and then another loop on the other side only, and therefore you only just picking up 2 loops total. But that's an explanation for another video. So for this one, I don't want to confuse you guys. So you just continue to do this. So where you're joining should look something like this. Very, very neat. Very invisible. You can't see it. So just go ahead and do that all the way until you get to the end here. When you get to the end here, come back to the video, and I will pretty much be showing you guys how both of them looks like, because I'm gonna also offline join my second piece as well. Okay, so I will see you guys in a bit. Okay, my lovelies, we're just in the last stretch of the project here, and so as you can see, I have pretty much joined these leg warmer all the way to the end. So I'm on the top here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a not weaving per se, but like just kind of bringing it in like that. And what I'm gonna do is just take my my darning needle out, and then I'm just gonna pretty much kind of knot these here, maybe once, twice, maybe 3 times, just to make it secure. If you prefer to weave in your ends, that is up to you. Please go ahead and do so. I don't weave in my ends, at least not as often as possible. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut my yarn somewhere there, put my tails away, and then that's it. So that is pretty much it here. So this is how my leg warmer looks like. And then it's gonna look a little bit twisted, and you're just going to kind of rearrange it by bringing stitches that are supposed to line up together with each other. And when you do, you're gonna have something like this. So for those of you who did the wrist warmers with me, you will see that it's literally the same thing, except we're just making it longer to be for our leg, warming, as opposed to be our wrist warming. And I have my second one completed here as well. So these are my 2 pieces. Again, when you first join it, they would look a little bit twisted, but you just kind of straighten them up like so. And that's pretty much it here. So these are my 2 leg warmers. I'm gonna obviously show pictures on how they actually look when you put them on. But that's pretty much it here. I really hope you guys enjoyed doing this. This was obviously something that one of you had requested that I do. This is one stitch that a lot of people like on my YouTube channel. So I'm going to try to make more things with this stitch because it seems to be something that people like. And I don't blame you guys. Like, look how beautiful this is. Like, who doesn't want something that looks like this? And when you look back at it, you're like, yeah, I made that. Like, that is my work, right? Looks really nice. By the way, I'm putting it on my arm like it's an arm warmer, but it's so big that it goes up my arm. But anyway, so this is pretty much it here. So I hope you guys had fun making this with me. Thank you so much again for watching the video to the end. And if you have not subscribed to your girl's channel, please go ahead and do so now before you leave the video. And I have a lot of other content that I've created that you can go back and look at. I have scarves, I have sweaters, I have toques and beanies and everything. So go ahead and check it out, and you can always find something that you want to do. But also you can recommend if you want me to do something, because this is literally recommended by one of you who asked me to do the leg warmer tutorial for this using this stitch. So hey, if you have something in mind that you would like me to make, it doesn't hurt to ask, and if I can, I will do it. But that's pretty much it. Thank you so much again. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. Don't forget to comment if you have any questions or anything to say, and I will see you guys in my next video. Kwaheri.